So it's 2026. You are faced with college applications. You're faced with grant writing. You're faced with teenagers coming to ask for paperwork for going to work and possibly stepping out on their own and doing all the clerical work that comes along with being a mom, a caregiver. And on top of that, you're dealing with all kinds of issues in the market of what we call modern day America. Today, we're talking to Letoya Lamb, my wife and partner. She is going to share what is caregiver burnout, how we can support one another with caregivers who are burnt out, and steps that a person who is burned out can take to take care of him or herself. So, without further ado, here's Letoya Lamb.
Hello, everybody. I was kind of cracking up to myself and starting to hyperventilate when you started giving a list of all the stuff, all the chores and all the lists.
And that's just what I know and I
Oh,
see
child,
visually.
that's it.
Yeah, that got nothing to do with anything else. That's just what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
So
I like how you left you out the list, but okay.
I left my. Okay, so we're gonna
Yeah.
get to that later. But
What?
I the reason why I left myself out of that list is because the next topic we're going to be talking about, what is long suffering, helping repair what you didn't break, and I left myself out for that episode specifically, so that's why I left myself out.
Okay.
But with that said, you're right. I am a part of the load.
Child,
I will
yeah,
definitely
what?
say that I am a part of the load.
I'm not just a
because
mom.
You're not just a mom. You're a wife, and you are a partner with me. So there's things that you have to deal with as well. But when you told me the other topic, I said, you know what? I think we should leave that out for that one because that's going to be exclusively about us, our relationship, childhoods, and things of that nature. So I wanted to hold this
Good God.
first one just for the ones who are doing the clerical issues, the work, because they may not have a spouse that's overbearing. They may not have that situation. They might just be swamped with work, swamped with taking care of children and getting them up to get them out the door, right? So that's a lot of work. So that I wanted to separate those two. But back to what we was originally talking about. What is caregiver burnout? Can you explain that to the audience?
Well, I could give you the definitions of it or the warning signs and the symptoms. And then I'll tell you what it looks like for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, caregiver burnout, which I didn't even realize it until it was too late. I've been burnt out multiple times. It wasn't just one isolated event. But caregiver burnout looks like chronic fatigue, irritability and anger, social isolation, physical symptoms, basically a weakened immune system. You get sick more frequently, sleep disturbances, changes in appetite, feelings of hopelessness, etc. So, which I've experienced all of that, and then some. Yeah, so persistent emotional and physical exhaustion. So I'll stop there because I live there. I've lived there for a long time. Caregiver burnout looks like exactly what it sounds like. I have found myself caring for, nurturing, supporting, helping everybody else. And I was just thinking about this the other day, and then this morning I found myself forgetting me, because the roles started to look like wife and mom, and a whole lot of wife and mom and college prep, health, household administration, follow through, follow up, emails galore, phone calls, just a lot of brain, I don't want to call it brain pollution, but just a lot, just a lot of strenuous work at home. And it there was a season where I felt like it was just easier for me to go to work and work on somebody else's job than work at home, because at home you don't cut off, you don't turn off. Even that's what you told me one time, like, I want to take you away because as long as you're home, you're always going to have that checklist. So for me, it looks like being totally engulfed into everybody's issue without being able to really focus on me. And so much so where I got lost um, in caring, lost in nurturing, lost in everyone else's issue taking up residence in my mind. Like, it wasn't just like renting in my mind, it was just taking up residency. And every night I would go to bed with that. Every morning I would wake up with that. And it would take a lot of work, still does every day, to, people say, compartmentalize. Like, okay, this time goes to that. And I allocate that time just for whatever it is, and take my time back for me. Because I would give in a lot of, and I'm not a feminist or any of those, buzzwords. I'm actually against all of that, because it's really ruined our society. That's just my opinion. So don't take it this way as far as a woman. But I had to preface that because as a woman and the woman of the house, yeah, just naturally speaking, I believe that that's how God made us. We are, quote, not to say only the weaker vessel, but quote, that meaning the more sensitive one. And that's not to say that men are not sensitive. I'm married to one. But sensitive, intuitive, we feel very deeply. So when I say a woman, the mind is always on the family. The mind and the heart is always pulled towards, what do they need? What more can I do? What else is it that I'm not doing that I should be doing so that it would help ease things along? What is a constant worry? It's a constant concern at the forefront of my mind and heart every day of my life. And so that is exhausting. Thinking is exhausting. And child, add Perry into it, and that's a whole nother planet. Because I don't call that onto myself and all that kind of stuff, but it's just physiological things. It's just a natural, way of life, and Perry, and then going into menopause and all those different phases of life. But maybe you ain't there. If you're not, God bless you, child, because that just added a whole what do you call torpedo onto it. Like, that just added something else.
Right.
So all the irritability, short-tempered, the unstable hormones, night sweats, just you got your own thing going on. But the concerns of those that you care for the most, it just consumes you. That's what it's been like for me. And yeah, so I've had my own health challenges and things like that over the past 3 years, 6.5 years, but the last 3 were the worst. And I found myself drowning, just drowning. Because like one of the definitions was, you get, caregivers tend to get sick too.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm not saying that that's where that came from. There was just some other health challenges that were insurmountable, and they, but thank God I'm feeling better.
Would you like to touch on that, or not really?
I'll get there if I feel led to.
Okay.
But what I have noticed, because I started to research this, because caregiver burnout is not something that just came to me now. Our amazing, wonderful children years ago, they're teenagers and young men now. Amazing young men now. They just blow me away. They we're so proud of them. And I said all that to say, years ago when they were younger, they were both diagnosed, and basically on very high functioning on the spectrum of different challenges, not to get into their business, but that adds so much more to the plethora of things that we've had to learn and just discover, work through as a family, work through with specialists and all of that. So that added more, because being a quote, what people call quote, a special needs mom is different than a quote mainstream mom. So when they were younger, it was, sensory issues and certain places that we couldn't go because, people just can be rude and they don't understand. And you can only understand if you've experienced that. And, if you haven't experienced it, or if you don't know anyone that has these different, they learn differently, or they respond to stimuli differently in the public and stuff. If you don't know anything about that, then how could you be sensitive to it? You don't even realize it's a thing. So, because back then we didn't realize it was a thing.
Now let me you brought up a very interesting point, that there wasn't. So are you getting okay? So here's what I'm hearing. Here's what I'm hearing.
Okay.
When it came down to having special needs children,
Uh-huh.
that was just an added load on top
Yes.
of what we was dealing with. Now, keep in mind, we've known since our oldest was 3 years old that he was special needs. Right?
At the time.
We knew.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like.
Well, we didn't know. We found out. It was dropped in our lap.
I mean, yeah.
So, yeah, okay.
It was revealed to us.
Okay, yeah.
With the linear play, the losing of the words. So we realized, okay, there's an issue here because he should be progressing, not regressing. And we started to look for support, and we came across some people to teach us a little bit more about what his diagnosis was. And then we had some amazing tutors. Like, they were stellar. Nikki, I think about her all the time, and
then,
she was kicking
She
butt.
was awesome.
Yeah, so
back in New Jersey.
Yeah.
For her blonde hair. She was awesome. Nikki,
Yes.
if you were out there, we still love you, girl. She was
Yeah.
amazing, and she loved our David like he was her own. He was only 3.
Yeah.
He was a little boy. And yeah, she was amazing.
She was wonderful.
She was phenomenal.
And I spent most of the time with her because at the time you was working.
Yeah,
So-
people don't realize that. You have to readjust your whole life. Yeah.
So, what would you say to the parents who may not deal with those issues, but still deal with childhood burnout based on rambunctious children, the jumping around the house, because you've been in childcare for the longest time.
Oh my gosh.
So you've experienced the other side of it because you were in
I love
childcare,
children. Yeah.
which is, I think, was even more of a load. So not only are you dealing with special needs children, a special need husband.
You always call yourself that, but
because,
okay.
Let's be honest. I really think I'm on the spectrum somewhere.
Maybe. I think majority of society is, but don't get me started on that. Yeah.
But you're also dealing with that. And on top of that, you are working in an environment where you're dealing with stressed out moms and dads, dropping off their rambunctious children who don't like to listen. So you're dealing with that on top of your own children. So you want to, you want to like build on that because let's be honest, that's a load. In my opinion, that would be a load too.
So for an onlooker, for someone on the outside looking in, I could see how that looks like crazy talk. Like, what in the world, right? But I think it's important in life that we all, if we could just all stay in our God lane, like if we could just stay in our lane and do what we are called to do and what we flourish at, what we are good at, then it would just make the world a better place. And it made my world a better place. It was, so on the outside looking in, I'm sure it looked crazy, like you already dealing with this at home. And don't get me wrong, no issues as far as that. Our children were amazing. They still are amazing. It was just an adjustment to what we thought our life would look like. We had picture schedules at home. We did sign language before we knew it was a thing, like all of that. And so it was challenging, to say the least, at home. It was challenging when they were small. It was difficult. But working with children. So when they were small, I worked in a lot of corporate places and stuff, and that was just not my zhuzh. I did wonderfully at it, having a stellar, as you said, resume, and but that my heart was not in that. And so, and I love children, adolescent, early childhood is my thing. So actually, even up until the last few years before I got sick, um, I so thoroughly enjoyed working with children that it made my job as a mom easier. It helped me. Um, it helped me in ways that I didn't even realize. It helped me. I'm that sappy mom, and I cry at the drop of a hat over the smallest things with our kids because only God knows, and those that are closest to us knows their journey, and they've just surpassed and excelled at everything that was quote spoken that they wouldn't be, they are and are way past that. So it helped me. So I said that to say I was already a grateful mom, but it made me that much more grateful. I would hug my babies at work, and it made me hug my babies at home even tighter.
Yeah.
So yeah, that helped me. So what you were asking was should the parent or the caregiver do when they are already dealing with these things with their maybe rambunctious child, or thank God this is not our story, but their disrespectful child. Let's say if that's your story, whatever it is. I would say what has worked for me in the past and what I am now, the new terminology is circling back. I'm circling back to what brings me joy. And so being with children, little children especially, that brought me great joy, and I really enjoyed, that season of my life. It was tough because, again, we were, and anybody knows, especially caregivers it's caregivers in general, but if you are a special needs caregiver, there are expenses that you do not expect to come up.
Yeah.
So, there were many financial hardships for a long time. And so we had to work. We decided on what was best for our family. Do what works for your family. Do not, be finagled into or guilted into, mainstream society or whatever. You have to do what works for your house.
Yeah.
Just like the pastor that married us said, let them be married in their house. And if you don't understand, pray for them.
That's it.
Mind your business.
Before I want to keep you on track here.
Yeah, so
okay.
Thank you. So what I was going to say was I needed to work. Then there's the caregiver guilt because you need to be there for them, but the bills
caregiver guilt.
Yeah, because the bills are they are still mounting up. That, as you say, and it's a song that you've sang for years, that bill is still due every month. And they're going to be expecting it to be paid. They don't care at all about your situation.
Yep.
You can tell them you're having a hardship however many times you want till you blue in the face, but it is coming due at that time, whatever time of the month. So they're expecting those bills to be paid. So we had to work. We had to adjust our lives and all of these things. So, there was caregiver guilt. A lot of times I'm caring for other people's kids and I couldn't be with my own kids because we had bills. And I remember our youngest son, he was maybe 7 or 8. And thankfully, at the time, I was working at a private daycare. That's a whole nother story. Private and public, those, it's different. It's another story because people can tend to do whatever they want when it's their business. But I enjoyed the place itself. You talked about aggravated parents, dropping off their unruly children, all that.
Sick kids all the
time. We were never sick, but you sent your sick kids to school, and now my kids are sick, so we're all sick at home, and nobody was sick. We take our vitamins, we do all the things. If they were sick, we didn't send them to school, all that type of stuff. And so, yeah, I remember when he was little, thankfully I was working at this place where we had to do trainings and all of this all the time, but and you were working, our other son was in school, and I was telling him, like, listen, I'm always here. I worked full-time at the time. Many years I worked part-time because of our lifestyle and things we had going on at home. So, but at that time, it was like all hands on deck. We were full-time. The kids were in school. They were able to be at school. But that day, during the training, school was closed, and then it was Friday, and then it's Saturday. You had to work. We had someone with the other children, our other son. So I asked my director, like, listen, you know the situation. Basically, all the women that's here, we have kids. What are you expecting us to do? You can bring him with you. Great, because we don't have a sitter, you know.
Right.
And we have wonderful family members that did keep our children very often. We didn't keep them with everybody, but the ones that we did keep them with were amazing. I think your village is very important, because every parent needs a rest. And if you're a caregiver, you need double the amount of rest.
Yep.
So I brought him to school with me, so I could be there and do my training and stuff. But when I say about the caregiver guilt, he would ask me, Mommy, he's a young man now, but when he was a little boy, he was like my bestest friend. And he would say, Mommy, why are you always going with those kids?
Oh.
Oh, man.
Boy, did that hit.
The guilt.
Yeah.
Because how do you explain to a child? You can explain as much as you want to, but all they know is dad and mom keep leaving.
Yeah.
You know, so it was really hard. I explained to him that I was there to help our family. I was there to help us. You see those shoes? You see what we're doing? This is because dad and mom are working, you know. So it was hard.
Yeah.
But it was rewarding in that working in that field and doing the things that I was able to do for the time that I was able to do that. It helped keep me a bit more sane, so to speak. It was good for my mental health. It wasn't bad for my mental health.
Right.
It was good. Having your own identity is very important when you are a caregiver.
Now, I want you to hold on to
Okay.
that because we're jumping ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. So we have, thank you for that, by the way.
Sure.
I trust that the people who are listening gathered a lot of good information off of that.
Yeah, I hope so.
And feel connected, because I think that's the whole purpose of these conversations that we're starting to have again, is because we want to help. We want to give back what we've learned over the times.
What she said, throw the rope back.
Throw the rope back, because there's plenty of parents that do not have this kind of outlet.
Yeah.
They just don't. There's women out there that just feel stuck. They don't know how to speak to their husbands about what they're going through, because their husbands don't see it or understand what they're going through, because they're basically shielding the husband from all the other stuff that would normally fall on a caregiver. So that is being shielded from the husband. So when the wife comes saying, I've had it, I'm done, don't ask me nothing, the husband's confused, like, what did I do? Nothing. You didn't do anything. She's just tapped out. So what can this brings me into the next kind of question. What can spouses do to support each other in this when you are dealing with because you already did the side effects, you went straight into side effects, so we might, if you see anything there that you did not mention, please do so as well. But what can a spouse, because in today's society, the caregiver could be the man or the woman.
Yes.
All right, we have literally shed gender roles. We shed them. We like, all right,
I
cool.
hope y'all happy with that, but okay.
I mean, it's an adjustment. To say the least. I'm not really. I was okay. This is not about the husband part. I'm gonna keep my on another conversation. But being a man who did do a lot of the caregiving and giving back that care to my wife at a certain time when I went back to work. I saw both roles. Now, I grew up with siblings, so I kind of had an idea of how to deal with a child. Not so much a special needs child, but I knew how to handle children, babies, and stuff like that.
Yeah, you did great. You were amazing.
But then when we passed the ball and you went back and you took the reins, you just took the reins. Like, I got it, I'm doing it, let's move on. So what can spouses do to support one another, especially when one of the spouses are dealing with caregiver burnout?
Yeah, I think it's important to be honest with each other. And it sounds so simple, but it's really not, because like you just said, Maybe it's the wife or the husband, who knows, the dad or the grandma or the uncle, auntie, whoever is the caregiver. And some I'm only speaking on I can only speak on this topic as someone who has uh, the other person home with me. Some people, it's only them,
Mm-hmm.
so that's another story.
Mm-hmm.
But if there are two of y'all at home, caregivers for this child or children, it's important to be honest, because what you just said was the me to say the wife was shielding you a lot of time from what was happening, and then all of a sudden the husband sees, like, she's like, all right, I'm out, I tap out, don't bother me. And it can be bewildering because he doesn't know what's going on. So if we're able to trust that our honesty is not going to isolate you or me, if it's welcome, if like you would tell me, even up until the past few months or last year, you like, share these things with me, let me shoulder it with you, let me in. So if the honesty is there and you know that you can express yourself and tell, your spouse, hey, I'm drowning, I'm exhausted, whatever it is, whatever you might be feeling, that that takes the isolation away. Like, one of the issues was, or symptoms is, isolation.
Mm-hmm.
So that helps with the isolation because we can shoulder this together. I think another area is just checking, how like you said this to me a while ago. I can only use examples. I don't like to talk about what I don't know nothing about. So I know about this. And you would say, I don't know, we were in therapy or what it was from, but um, we've worked at this for a long time. What percentage are you at today?
Yeah.
And we would share,
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, I'm at 10%. Don't look at me for more. I don't have nothing else to give you or nobody else. That's where I've been at lately.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're able to just check in with each other, hey, how's it going? How you doing? Like you said this to me recently. I don't know that you know what you need, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I don't. But it is important for us to check in with each other. Sometimes you might just need a hug. Sometimes you might just need, someone to relieve you of your duties for those, an hour or two, so that you can go outside, go for a drive, go for a walk, get some fresh air, just, you know, allow yourself to watch a TV show without the child in your face or
Mm-hmm.
without feeling guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Take a minute, sometimes just for yourself. So I think those two areas are major, because if you can honestly share, hey, it's a bad day today, and know that it will be received, and know that you will not be judged or whatever, but that you have someone to share that with, then it makes a big difference for me. I know it's made a big difference for me over the years. Um, and and now that our children are young men now, and they're doing their own thing, and they are, you know, making decisions, and they're venturing out, and all of that. We talked about this years ago, that there would be a time that we would switch roles, switch gears, and then I'll pass the baton.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you said, it was a season that I just took over, like, all right, hit the floor running. But now the tables have turned a little bit, and although I'm still very much active when it comes to documentation, paperwork, follow through, all those things,
Right.
um, the nurturing changes. They still need their mom, but not like they did when they were younger. So knowing that you can unload and unburden yourself with someone else, whether it be your husband or your wife or a loved one, someone in your village, knowing that you have that support is really important. And my heart goes out to whoever you are. If you don't have that support right now, because I know that it could be extremely hard if if no one else is there. I would honestly suggest that you say if someone does not have somebody there, because it's not always another shoulder to cry on. It's not always someone to relieve them. I would suggest that you don't give yourself an out as far as, well, I can handle it. Well, I'm not telling nobody, this is just my situation and I got the kids, or I got, you know, is maybe it's not a child, because caregivers are their range of age. Maybe there's a senior. It's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
And so you have to for your self-preservation reach out to other agencies that are out there. Let them know your situation. You don't have to tell them everything, but tell them something.
Yeah.
Let them shoulder this with you. Hey, because I know that there's funding for a lot of things. Sometimes you have to get on a list and stuff like that. Give yourself that option. Give yourself that relief, because for me it was a relief to go online and see that there's all these other blogs, and this is years ago, before autism, before any of the spectrum was an issue, was a topic. It's big now, but 17, 18 years ago it was just beginning, to the point where it's not where it is now. It's skyrocketed, but back then the conversation was really just getting started.
Yep.
So I found community when I was reaching out to these people and saying, hey, I need some help with this, or, oh, wow, you're going through that with your daughter. Oh, we have this situation with our son. What about just those things? Lightens the load. If there is no one else there with you in your home, there's people outside your house.
Yes.
And I heard this said before a couple of years ago, and it stuck with me. This very special woman that I've listened to for years. She said, you have to have somebody, an ally, outside your four walls of your house.
Yes.
You have to have an ally outside your home. So, if it's one person, am I saying burn that person out all the time? No, but if you need to, reach out.
Yes.
Don't let yourself be stuck in caregiver mode, where you start to resent caregiving, because I got there at one point.
Ooh,
it
that's
can
something
happen.
that we need to talk about.
Yeah, these
Yes.
things could happen if you allow yourself to go too far. So I would say allow someone else to shoulder the burden with you. Yeah.
All right. Well, you just answered the last two questions.
Did I?
Yeah, because I was just going to ask, what can someone do for themselves who is experiencing caregiver burnout? And you just said it. Look for a support system.
Yes.
Look for individuals that you can anchor to, because you'll be surprised how many people want to share their experiences and testimonies and how they overcame something with someone else, because they remember when they were going through it, how alone they felt. Like in that alone time, that moment of solitude, where you don't have anybody but you and your brain and your emotions and the chemical reactions that's happening because of what you're having going on in your brain, and then one more thing just won't do, and that's when you flip, and it's like you was just fine 5 seconds ago, but you hit that one. And this is something that we always talk about. We rarely talk about it now, but we used to say it all the time. Do not hit that baby nerve.
Yeah.
If you hit that baby nerve, 1 to 1,000 immediately. It was I am their father. I have provided for my children in so many ways that you can't even imagine. And even I don't hit the baby nerve.
Don't do it.
It's not about being the leader or whatever, the mom. It's just there are certain things you just do not do when it comes down to a parent.
Yeah.
Okay, so I get that, but also knowing my spouse well enough to know that these are her triggers when it comes down to that, that's even more information for me as a spouse to support my wife. Do you need anything? Okay, can I go? Can I run to the store for you? Can I handle dinner tonight for you? Can I, do because I remember years ago, and this was way before I became eloquent with my words.
Oh, that's a nice way to put it.
Eloquent with my words. So back then, I used to I would probe with questions with the wrong words back then. But what I was trying to say, because I don't remember how to talk like that, because I deleted it. What I was trying to say back then was, what can I do to take the pressure off? But I said it in, you never let me in, or blah, 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 blah. And those things are challenging because it charges her defensively. I'm not trying to be on the defensive. I'm not trying to put her on the defensive, but I'm getting frustrated with her frustration.
Yeah.
I'm still because it's bleeding over into our relationship as husband and wife. She's venting to me with things, and I had to learn that sometimes venting don't mean fixing.
Yes.
And that was hard for me to learn because you fix it, you do it, and that's it. So I had to learn, are you venting? Because there was a time where we even just did that. We would sit there and talk, and you'll be saying things, and I literally had to ask, is this a fixing moment for me? Or you just want to get it off your chest? And she'll let me know, or I'll just get it off my chest. So spouses can help in that way too, yeah, to help with the lines of communication. Understand, like, listen, I could turn your 10% into 90%. Just let me know.
Yeah.
And that's where we are. Like, look, I got a lot on my plate, babe, but if I got 50 for you. So now you got 60. And that's more than 10, and that's better than 10. And sometimes that push your 10 up, because now you have that expense. Like, all right, he just said he got me. He's going to take care of these things. At least that's out of my hair. I don't have to worry about that. I can focus on this thing, close the door, do one of the obnoxious calls this lady has been on. Oh my Lord, the calls, the phone calls and meetings and waiting on hold for hours and hours and hours just to get a person on the phone to talk about a situation that needs to be addressed. I've watched my wife do that. I've witnessed it. So when she comes out the room and she's trying to woo-side, but she can't because, well, she still has that checklist that she didn't delegate yet, and we're sitting here just looking like bumping on a log saying, Ma, you need anything? Well, can you go to the store for me? Sure, my legs work. I can go to the store. Can you wash the dishes? No problem. I can wash the dishes. So I think that this conversation was very important for a lot of mothers and husbands as well, and fathers, because I think sometimes mothers don't get an opportunity to actually talk about the things that's really bothering them. They talk at them, or they will vent at them, but to sit down and just say, baby, I'm dealing with burnout right now, and I think I'm experiencing that, or better yet, I'm starting to get to a point where I'm ready to say enough is enough. Can you help me before I get to that point? Because maybe you don't have to burn out. Maybe you're low, and being able to talk to your spouse and let him or her know that you are getting to a place where I'm running out of steam here and I may need a break, because those breaks are important.
Yes.
It's very important. Think about it as sharpening your blade, right? You're sharpening your blade.
Yeah, you say that a lot.
You listen. My blade is dull, and it's taking a lot more effort for me to cut down this tree. So I'm gonna take some time, sharpen my blade. All right, you hold off on the log burning right now. Turn the heat down for a couple of days so I can get myself together, and I'll be back on track. So I think that's it for this episode. Is there anything else you would like to share?
Yeah, I just wanted to make disclaimer, public service announcement, just a caveat to this. When you're dealing with caregiver burnout, if you are able to get time to yourself, a couple of times a week, just be mindful that you don't fill that time with unhealthy behavior. Don't fill that time with things that are going to create another problem because you're so tired, you're so exhausted. Don't, you know, fill in the blank, y'all. You know what I'm saying? Fill it with something positive and healthy. I believe in God and therapy. You know, a lot of prayer, go for walks, do something healthy. Don't fill it with something unhealthy because caregiver burnout can create bad habits too.
Mm.
And you don't want to create a bad habit because you're super stressed.
Yes.
So, whatever is healthy that brings you joy, then, you know, do all that you can to refill your joy tank.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that is the end of this video. I sure hope you enjoyed yourself. I trust you've learned something. This is Gary and Letoya Lamb signing off. You guys have a good one.